367. I will practice daily sentences with a friend. 368. I will practice daily sentences with a tutor. 369. I will practice daily sentences in a study group. 370. I will practice daily sentences for 15 minutes. 371. I will practice real situations every day. 372. I will practice real situations in the morning. 373. I will practice real situations before bed. 374. I will practice real situations during lunch. 375. I will practice real situations while commuting. 376. I will practice real situations on weekends. 377. I will practice real situations with a friend. 378. I will practice real situations with a tutor. 379. I will practice real situations in a study group. 380. I will practice real situations for 15 minutes. 381. I will practice short dialogues every day. 382. I will practice short dialogues in the morning. 383. I will practice short dialogues before bed. 384. I will practice short dialogues during lunch. 385. I will practice short dialogues while commuting. 386. I will practice short dialogues on weekends. 387. I will practice short dialogues with a friend. 388. I will practice short dialogues with a tutor. 389. I will practice short dialogues in a study group. 390. I will practice short dialogues for 15 minutes. 391. I will practice everyday phrases every day. 392. I will practice everyday phrases in the morning. 393. I will practice everyday phrases before bed. 394. I will practice everyday phrases during lunch. 395. I will practice everyday phrases while commuting. 396. I will practice everyday phrases on weekends. 397. I will practice everyday phrases with a friend. 398. I will practice everyday phrases with a tutor. 399. I will practice everyday phrases in a study group. 400. I will practice everyday phrases for 15 minutes. 401. I try to practice English every day. 402. I try to practice English in the morning. 403. I try to practice English before bed. 404. I try to practice English during lunch. 405. I try to practice English while commuting. 406. I try to practice English on weekends. 407. I try to practice English with a friend. 408. I try to practice English with a tutor. 409. I try to practice English in a study group. 410. I try to practice English for 15 minutes. 411. I try to practice speaking every day. 412. I try to practice speaking in the morning. 413. I try to practice speaking before bed. 414. I try to practice speaking during lunch. 415. I try to practice speaking while commuting. 416. I try to practice speaking on weekends. 417. I try to practice speaking with a friend. 418. I try to practice speaking with a tutor. 419. I try to practice speaking in a study group. 420. I try to practice speaking for 15 minutes. 421. I try to practice conversation every day. 422. I try to practice conversation in the morning. 423. I try to practice conversation before bed. 424. I try to practice conversation during lunch. 425. I try to practice conversation while commuting. 426. I try to practice conversation on weekends. 427. I try to practice conversation with a friend. 428. I try to practice conversation with a tutor. 429. I try to practice conversation in a study group. 430. I try to practice conversation for 15 minutes. 431. I try to practice pronunciation every day. 432. I try to practice pronunciation in the morning. 433. I try to practice pronunciation before bed. 434. I try to practice pronunciation during lunch. 435. I try to practice pronunciation while commuting. 436. I try to practice pronunciation on weekends. 437. I try to practice pronunciation with a friend. 438. I try to practice pronunciation with a tutor. 439. I try to practice pronunciation in a study group. 440. I try to practice pronunciation for 15 minutes. 441. I try to practice listening every day. 442. I try to practice listening in the morning. 443. I try to practice listening before bed. 444. I try to practice listening during lunch. 445. I try to practice listening while commuting. 446. I try to practice listening on weekends. 447. I try to practice listening with a friend. 448. I try to practice listening with a tutor. 449. I try to practice listening in a study group. 450. I try to practice listening for 15 minutes. 451. I try to practice vocabulary every day. 452. I try to practice vocabulary in the morning. 453. I try to practice vocabulary before bed. 454. I try to practice vocabulary during lunch. 455. I try to practice vocabulary while commuting. 456. I try to practice vocabulary on weekends. 457. I try to practice vocabulary with a friend. 458. I try to practice vocabulary with a tutor. 459. I try to practice vocabulary in a study group. 460. I try to practice vocabulary for 15 minutes. 461. I try to practice daily sentences every day. 462. I try to practice daily sentences in the morning. 463. I try to practice daily sentences before bed. 464. I try to practice daily sentences during lunch. 465. I try to practice daily sentences while commuting. 466. I try to practice daily sentences on weekends. 467. I try to practice daily sentences with a friend. 468. I try to practice daily sentences with a tutor. 469. I try to practice daily sentences in a study group. 470. I try to practice daily sentences for 15 minutes. 471. I try to practice real situations every day. 472. I try to practice real situations in the morning. 473. I try to practice real situations before bed. 474. I try to practice real situations during lunch. 475. I try to practice real situations while commuting. 476. I try to practice real situations on weekends. 477. I try to practice real situations with a friend. 478. I try to practice real situations with a tutor. 479. I try to practice real situations in a study group. 480. I try to practice real situations for 15 minutes. 481. I try to practice short dialogues every day. 482. I try to practice short dialogues in the morning. 483. I try to practice short dialogues before bed. 484. I try to practice short dialogues during lunch. 485. I try to practice short dialogues while commuting. 486. I try to practice short dialogues on weekends. 487. I try to practice short dialogues with a friend. 488. I try to practice short dialogues with a tutor. 489. I try to practice short dialogues in a study group. 490. I try to practice short dialogues for 15 minutes. 491. I try to practice everyday phrases every day. 492. I try to practice everyday phrases in the morning. 493. I try to practice everyday phrases before bed. 494. I try to practice everyday phrases during lunch. 495. I try to practice everyday phrases while commuting. 496. I try to practice everyday phrases on weekends. 497. I try to practice everyday phrases with a friend. 498. I try to practice everyday phrases with a tutor. 499. I try to practice everyday phrases in a study group. 500. I try to practice everyday phrases for 15 minutes. 501. I started practicing English every day. 502. I started practicing English in the morning. 503. I started practicing English before bed. 504. I started practicing English during lunch. 505. I started practicing English while commuting. 506. I started practicing English on weekends. 507. I started practicing English with a friend. 508. I started practicing English with a tutor. 509. I started practicing English in a study group. 510. I started practicing English for 15 minutes. 511. I started practicing speaking every day. 512. I started practicing speaking in the morning. 513. I started practicing speaking before bed. 514. I started practicing speaking during lunch. 515. I started practicing speaking while commuting. 516. I started practicing speaking on weekends. 517. I started practicing speaking with a friend. 518. I started practicing speaking with a tutor. 519. I started practicing speaking in a study group. 520. I started practicing speaking for 15 minutes. 521. I started practicing conversation every day. 522. I started practicing conversation in the morning. 523. I started practicing conversation before bed. 524. I started practicing conversation during lunch. 525. I started practicing conversation while commuting. 526. I started practicing conversation on weekends. 527. I started practicing conversation with a friend. 528. I started practicing conversation with a tutor. 529. I started practicing conversation in a study group. 530. I started practicing conversation for 15 minutes. 531. I started practicing pronunciation every day. 532. I started practicing pronunciation in the morning. 533. I started practicing pronunciation before bed. 534. I started practicing pronunciation during lunch. 535. I started practicing pronunciation while commuting. 536. I started practicing pronunciation on weekends. 537. I started practicing pronunciation with a friend. 538. I started practicing pronunciation with a tutor. 539. I started practicing pronunciation in a study group. 540. I started practicing pronunciation for 15 minutes. 541. I started practicing listening every day. 542. I started practicing listening in the morning. 543. I started practicing listening before bed. 544. I started practicing listening during lunch. 545. I started practicing listening while commuting. 546. I started practicing listening on weekends. 547. I started practicing listening with a friend. 548. I started practicing listening with a tutor. 549. I started practicing listening in a study group. 550. I started practicing listening for 15 minutes. 551. I started practicing vocabulary every day. 552. I started practicing vocabulary in the morning. 553. I started practicing vocabulary before bed. 554. I started practicing vocabulary during lunch. 555. I started practicing vocabulary while commuting. 556. I started practicing vocabulary on weekends. 557. I started practicing vocabulary with a friend. 558. I started practicing vocabulary with a tutor. 559. I started practicing vocabulary in a study group. 560. I started practicing vocabulary for 15 minutes. 561. I started practicing daily sentences every day. 562. I started practicing daily sentences in the morning. 563. I started practicing daily sentences before bed. 564. I started practicing daily sentences during lunch. 565. I started practicing daily sentences while commuting. 566. I started practicing daily sentences on weekends. 567. I started practicing daily sentences with a friend. 568. I started practicing daily sentences with a tutor. 569. I started practicing daily sentences in a study group. 570. I started practicing daily sentences for 15 minutes. 571. I started practicing real situations every day. 572. I started practicing real situations in the morning. 573. I started practicing real situations before bed. 574. I started practicing real situations during lunch. 575. I started practicing real situations while commuting. 576. I started practicing real situations on weekends. 577. I started practicing real situations with a friend. 578. I started practicing real situations with a tutor. 579. I started practicing real situations in a study group. 580. I started practicing real situations for 15 minutes. 581. I started practicing short dialogues every day. 582. I started practicing short dialogues in the morning. 583. I started practicing short dialogues before bed. 584. I started practicing short dialogues during lunch. 585. I started practicing short dialogues while commuting. 586. I started practicing short dialogues on weekends. 587. I started practicing short dialogues with a friend. 588. I started practicing short dialogues with a tutor. 589. I started practicing short dialogues in a study group. 590. I started practicing short dialogues for 15 minutes. 591. I started practicing everyday phrases every day. 592. I started practicing everyday phrases in the morning. 593. I started practicing everyday phrases before bed. 594. I started practicing everyday phrases during lunch. 595. I started practicing everyday phrases while commuting. 596. I started practicing everyday phrases on weekends. 597. I started practicing everyday phrases with a friend. 598. I started practicing everyday phrases with a tutor. 599. I started practicing everyday phrases in a study group. 600. I started practicing everyday phrases for 15 minutes. 601. I keep practicing English every day. 602. I keep practicing English in the morning. 603. I keep practicing English before bed. 604. I keep practicing English during lunch. 605. I keep practicing English while commuting. 606. I keep practicing English on weekends. 607. I keep practicing English with a friend. 608. I keep practicing English with a tutor. 609. I keep practicing English in a study group. 610. I keep practicing English for 15 minutes. 611. I keep practicing speaking every day. 612. I keep practicing speaking in the morning. 613. I keep practicing speaking before bed. 614. I keep practicing speaking during lunch. 615. I keep practicing speaking while commuting. 616. I keep practicing speaking on weekends. 617. I keep practicing speaking with a friend. 618. I keep practicing speaking with a tutor. 619. I keep practicing speaking in a study group. 620. I keep practicing speaking for 15 minutes. 621. I keep practicing conversation every day. 622. I keep practicing conversation in the morning. 623. I keep practicing conversation before bed. 624. I keep practicing conversation during lunch. 625. I keep practicing conversation while commuting. 626. I keep practicing conversation on weekends. 627. I keep practicing conversation with a friend. 628. I keep practicing conversation with a tutor. 629. I keep practicing conversation in a study group. 630. I keep practicing conversation for 15 minutes. 631. I keep practicing pronunciation every day. 632. I keep practicing pronunciation in the morning. 633. I keep practicing pronunciation before bed. 634. I keep practicing pronunciation during lunch. 635. I keep practicing pronunciation while commuting. 636. I keep practicing pronunciation on weekends. 637. I keep practicing pronunciation with a friend. 638. I keep practicing pronunciation with a tutor. 639. I keep practicing pronunciation in a study group. 640. I keep practicing pronunciation for 15 minutes. 641. I keep practicing listening every day. 642. I keep practicing listening in the morning. 643. I keep practicing listening before bed. 644. I keep practicing listening during lunch. 645. I keep practicing listening while commuting. 646. I keep practicing listening on weekends. 647. I keep practicing listening with a friend. 648. I keep practicing listening with a tutor. 649. I keep practicing listening in a study group. 650. I keep practicing listening for 15 minutes. 651. I keep practicing vocabulary every day. 652. I keep practicing vocabulary in the morning. 653. I keep practicing vocabulary before bed. 654. I keep practicing vocabulary during lunch. 655. I keep practicing vocabulary while commuting. 656. I keep practicing vocabulary on weekends. 657. I keep practicing vocabulary with a friend. 658. I keep practicing vocabulary with a tutor. 659. I keep practicing vocabulary in a study group. 660. I keep practicing vocabulary for 15 minutes. 661. I keep practicing daily sentences every day. 662. I keep practicing daily sentences in the morning. 663. I keep practicing daily sentences before bed. 664. I keep practicing daily sentences during lunch. 665. I keep practicing daily sentences while commuting. 666. I keep practicing daily sentences on weekends. 667. I keep practicing daily sentences with a friend. 668. I keep practicing daily sentences with a tutor. 669. I keep practicing daily sentences in a study group. 670. I keep practicing daily sentences for 15 minutes. 671. I keep practicing real situations every day. 672. I keep practicing real situations in the morning. 673. I keep practicing real situations before bed. 674. I keep practicing real situations during lunch. 675. I keep practicing real situations while commuting. 676. I keep practicing real situations on weekends. 677. I keep practicing real situations with a friend. 678. I keep practicing real situations with a tutor. 679. I keep practicing real situations in a study group. 680. I keep practicing real situations for 15 minutes. 681. I keep practicing short dialogues every day. 682. I keep practicing short dialogues in the morning. 683. I keep practicing short dialogues before bed. 684. I keep practicing short dialogues during lunch. 685. I keep practicing short dialogues while commuting. 686. I keep practicing short dialogues on weekends. 687. I keep practicing short dialogues with a friend. 688. I keep practicing short dialogues with a tutor. 689. I keep practicing short dialogues in a study group. 690. I keep practicing short dialogues for 15 minutes. 691. I keep practicing everyday phrases every day. 692. I keep practicing everyday phrases in the morning. 693. I keep practicing everyday phrases before bed. 694. I keep practicing everyday phrases during lunch. 695. I keep practicing everyday phrases while commuting. 696. I keep practicing everyday phrases on weekends. 697. I keep practicing everyday phrases with a friend. 698. I keep practicing everyday phrases with a tutor. 699. I keep practicing everyday phrases in a study group. 700. I keep practicing everyday phrases for 15 minutes. 701. I enjoy practicing English every day. 702. I enjoy practicing English in the morning. 703. I enjoy practicing English before bed. 704. I enjoy practicing English during lunch. 705. I enjoy practicing English while commuting. 706. I enjoy practicing English on weekends. 707. I enjoy practicing English with a friend. 708. I enjoy practicing English with a tutor. 709. I enjoy practicing English in a study group. 710. I enjoy practicing English for 15 minutes. 711. I enjoy practicing speaking every day. 712. I enjoy practicing speaking in the morning. 713. I enjoy practicing speaking before bed. 714. I enjoy practicing speaking during lunch. 715. I enjoy practicing speaking while commuting. 716. I enjoy practicing speaking on weekends. 717. I enjoy practicing speaking with a friend. 718. I enjoy practicing speaking with a tutor. 719. I enjoy practicing speaking in a study group. 720. I enjoy practicing speaking for 15 minutes. 721. I enjoy practicing conversation every day. 722. I enjoy practicing conversation in the morning. 723. I enjoy practicing conversation before bed. 724. I enjoy practicing conversation during lunch. 725. I enjoy practicing conversation while commuting. 726. I enjoy practicing conversation on weekends. 727. I enjoy practicing conversation with a friend. 728. I enjoy practicing conversation with a tutor. 729. I enjoy practicing conversation in a study group. 730. I enjoy practicing conversation for 15 minutes. 731. I enjoy practicing pronunciation every day. 732. I enjoy practicing pronunciation in the morning. 733. I enjoy practicing pronunciation before bed. 734. I enjoy practicing pronunciation during lunch. 735. I enjoy practicing pronunciation while commuting. 736. I enjoy practicing pronunciation on weekends. 737. I enjoy practicing pronunciation with a friend. 738. I enjoy practicing pronunciation with a tutor. 739. I enjoy practicing pronunciation in a study group. 740. I enjoy practicing pronunciation for 15 minutes. 741. I enjoy practicing listening every day. 742. I enjoy practicing listening in the morning. 743. I enjoy practicing listening before bed. 744. I enjoy practicing listening during lunch. 745. I enjoy practicing listening while commuting. 746. I enjoy practicing listening on weekends. 747. I enjoy practicing listening with a friend. 748. I enjoy practicing listening with a tutor. 749. I enjoy practicing listening in a study group.